It's time to eat.
What are you hungry for?
Sit down and get ready to consume an abundance of fantasy football knowledge from Ross Tucker and John Daigle.
Feed me now. I'm starving.
On the Fantasy Feast Eatin' podcast.
Yeah, let's eat, baby. It is the Fantasy Feast Eatin' podcast. We are, of course, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. There's mini camps going on all around the NFL, which is cool. We are in stage 2 of our best ball rankings. Remember, a couple weeks ago, we kind of gave you a best ball primer. We especially were focused on best ball at DraftKings, where you should use the code ROSS. And last week, we got into the quarterback rankings from John, which are excellent. So we're going to do all the different positions. So today is tight ends. Next couple weeks, we'll do wide receivers and running backs from a best ball standpoint. July is when we have kind of a hodgepodge. We'll start to look forward to some season-long stuff. We'll get some guests on. We'll kind of recap some of the things that we learned and saw during OTAs and mini camps. But today, it is best ball rankings for tight ends. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman. You can check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. Check us out at Ross Tucker Pod, really whatever social platform you are on. We get more and more viewers every week. YouTube, which is cool, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Really appreciate those of you that rate, review, subscribe, share. RRSS, love it. The star of the show is John Daigle. He is the man. He's one of the absolute rock stars over at EstablishTheRun.com, where we have this crazy discount right now. 20% off if you use the code FEAST at EstablishTheRun.com. You're not going to find anything better than that. So go to EstablishTheRun.com, use that code FEAST for 20% off, and follow John on social while you're at it, at NotJDaigle. We got tight ends today, John, and last week I asked you, what the difference is in best ball between quarterbacks and quarterbacks for season long and best ball. And you talked a lot about, guys that you think you're going to play 17 games and rookies and all that. Is it the same thing for your tight end best ball rankings, where it's really about health and guys that you have confidence that'll be there every week?
I mean, anyone that looks at the weekly tight end leaderboard, which we have to do for fantasy, understands that it's the most volatile position. And so really you're taking on that volatility in the way you draft. That's why we suggest either taking one of the 2 elite options, I should say 3, the top 2 tiers we'll get into here in a moment. We like taking one of those 3 guys we'll discuss here in a second, or waiting until the very end of drafts. There's a reason just last year, for example, Jonnu Smith finished as the tight end 5 in points per game. Zach Ertz was the tight end 9. Dallas Goedert, the tight end 10. Tucker Kraft was the tight end 11. The production for tight ends to become a top 12 option, starting option weekly, it's really just a touchdown catch, and anyone can score a touchdown, especially the tight end position. So you take on that volatility by either grabbing one of the 3 elite options and then waiting and grabbing another one late, or really just waiting until much later and taking on 3 altogether from the last group of, go down the list: Hunter Henry, Theo Johnson, Jatavian Sanders, Jawan Johnson. It's all the same guy, honestly, because they all can score touchdowns. So that's the way we suggested ETR using tight ends in best ball.
Okay, so let's dive into it. And kind of similar to quarterback, you have a tier 1, although last week with quarterback there was 4 of them. This week with tight end, there's only 2 guys that are in your top tier for tight ends: Brock Bowers and Trey McBride.
Obviously, Brock Bowers is a rookie tight end to go over 1,000 receiving yards. Very clearly the one of the best tight end options. When we get to season-long rankings, I'll have them in the same tier. I'll have Trey McBride over Brock Bowers, though, but that's just because playing this game of stats and regression, at the end of the day, yes, we talk about football, but fantasy football is still a game we are trying to get good and win the game, not just look at football and then suggest this is the best way to play. Trey McBride still led every tight end in everything we love. Route percentage, the rate he was out there running routes with his quarterback, and target share, finished third with end zone targets because even the Cardinals look for him in terms of scoring touchdowns. That's the thing, though. He just didn't score touchdowns. Converted only one of those 9 end zone targets into a receiving score, and then finished the year with only 3 touchdowns. So I'll have Trey McBride banking on touchdown regression as my tight end 1 overall. But still, both of these guys will be available at the end of the first round, mid-second. And really, this is the window I want to grab my elite tight end if it falls to you. Getting Bowers or McBride, both very clearly the 1 and 2 option, whichever way you have them.
You know, that's a really good point about Trey. I think I did, what game did I do? Patriots game. I did a couple of his games last year, Bills and Patriots. But by the Patriots game, he broke the record in that game for most catches without a touchdown. They were all aware of it, John. We talked about them in meetings. It's actually a good thing to keep in mind for like prop bets and things like that. Because I would have bet a lot on prop bet Trey McBride score a touchdown against the Patriots because they were all very well aware of it, and it was a joke, but it wasn't. Like they wanted him to get a touchdown before he broke that record. They even tried a little shovel pass thing, and he got stuffed. So just something to keep in your back pocket there, John. I know you do prop betting stuff too, is that when a guy, whether it's a record he wants to break or a record he doesn't want to break, the teams are more aware of that, I think, than people realize. And they certainly did not want Trey to have that record potentially forever. So that's an interesting one. All right. Tier 2, some people might be surprised this guy's not in Tier 1 after how he played last year. Some people think he's still the best tight end in the league. George Kittle is in Tier 2.
I would not even bat an eye if someone had him in Tier 1. It's just that if you put him in Tier 1, because currently he's going a couple rounds after Trey McBride, then you're suggesting that you could take George Kittle in the second round and be just fine, and I don't think you need to, considering you can wait usually until the end of the third or fourth round. So I like to break my tiers up and how we can actually objectively draft these players as well, not just put them in player rankings for their talent. So George Kittle, in short, is aging like fine wine, even in his age 31 season last year, to lead all tight ends in yards per route run amid a season for the 49ers that, again, ended just terribly given all the injuries they were dealt on offense. Although George Kittle did break out and get that opportunity because Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Deebo Samuel were all missing at some point throughout the year, a lot of times together. It's still the fact that George Kittle could, in the past, still showed that when everyone was at full strength, he was still a ceiling tight end that would randomly pop up for overall tight end 1 games and win your week at that position. That's still what we want. And George Kittle showed he can still do that, not only last year, but in years past as well. Whenever Deebo Samuel was not on the field, obviously, Samuel traded to Washington. We're not expecting Brandon Ayuk to begin the year with the 49ers. Who knows if he'll be at full strength at any point all season long. So still want George Kittle as a top 3 tight end. Still a tier behind Bowers and McBride, in my opinion. But someone that you have the utmost confidence in, still to this point, if drafting him as a tight end 1 overall.
And behind Bowers and McBride is just a volume thing.
It is a volume and talent thing. Given the offense as well, the 49ers are predicted with Warren Sharp's easiest strength of schedule this year as opposed to facing a top 2 toughest strength of schedule last season. We're also going to put the 49ers offensive line and wide receivers back at full strength here. So everyone for the 49ers, and this includes George Kittle, you could argue their ADPs are too low just because, again, when everyone tunes back into fantasy, they are such recency bias pilled that they are drafting last year's stats, and they're not seeing the holes that we should actually be drafting to project, not just what happened already. And so I think the 49ers ADPs across the board, this includes Brock Purdy, Juwan Jennings, Purdy, of course, who we talked about in last week's episode, they're all just too low. You could argue that could be George Kittle, too, who's around too low.
What about the next round, or the next tier, I should say, Tier 3? You've got the current Detroit Lions tight end, and the former Detroit Lions tight end. You got Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson.
Two players who could definitely leapfrog George Kittle if all goes correct, but it seems like they're already ice skating uphill without Ben Johnson and playing a significantly tougher schedule. Not to mention the Lions' offensive line just falling apart throughout this offseason. I really, really worry about Jared Goff and that offense. Jared Goff, who has shown us it's not about playing indoors or outdoors. It literally comes down to, can a team get him under pressure? Because when they do, he will crumble. And I wonder how many pieces in Detroit can survive without Ben Johnson. Sam Laporta's one that could just fall off the face of the map, as he did in the in the first half, I should say, of last season. People were dropping Sam Laporta in the first 8 weeks because he was that unusable in fantasy since the ball was spread out so much rather than being concentrated. This year, if it's concentrated without Ben Johnson, I would imagine it is either Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jameson Williams over Sam Laporta. So we're certainly concerned about the bottom falling out here for Laporta's environment, and the same goes for TJ Hawkinson. It's fair to question what the Vikings are in 2025, given the additions they made to their offensive line, adding Ryan Kelly and Will Fries in free agency, and then drafting Donovan Jackson with a 24th overall pick. That could mean the Vikings are instead trying to transition under J.J. McCarthy to being more of a run-heavier team and banking on Brian Flores' defense, keeping them in low-scoring competitions, since they already showed they have the best run defense in the league with Brian Flores at the helm last year. So I worry about TJ Hawkinson's ceiling. I worry that that is not baked into his current ADP, like you're paying for last year's stats or last year's offense for Minnesota, when this is probably not that with the addition of Jordan Mason as well. And so that's why I'm concerned about tier 3. And I honestly probably just won't have any of these players in best ball, a fraction, a minute amount, just because their ADPs I feel like are not reflected with their range of outcomes.
I can't believe it's June already, and we're a couple months away from NFL preseason games. Listen, Smirnoff's perfect for the summer, for those preseason games, because Smirnoff, we do game days, even in the off season. Listen, you heard it all season long. The fun doesn't stop now. Smirnoff knows there's no I in football. It's a we thing. Good drinks, good folks. That's what the summer's for, hanging out with family and friends. Grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com. They have some really cool recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. Ooh, okay, I like that. What about the next tier, which is tier 4? And you do this sometimes. Did it last week with Joe Burrow. This week, it's Travis Kelce. Year 13 is in a tier unto himself, John. Why is that?
The Chiefs showed last year, at least in the first month of the season, that they did not want to use Travis Kelce as a full-time player and only got forced to once Rashee Rice was dealt his season-ending injury, and Xavier Worthy didn't break out until the second half of the year. Travis Kelce didn't earn 15% of the Chiefs' targets and didn't run a route on even 80% of their dropbacks. Again, a part-time player with Noah Gray in that first month of the season until Rashee Rice went down. Only then did Travis Kelce see a 15% target share in every single game from that point forward, and then became a full-time player in routes run. So with everyone back at full strength, Rashee Rice is even practicing in full right now at voluntary OTAs after his early, but still serious injury, torn ACL, he suffered at the beginning of the year. It seems like they're going to come back out, the Chiefs, with everyone at full health. Thus, they are allowed to limit Travis Kelce and just keep him rested until their obvious playoff run. So Travis Kelce, I'll definitely be behind on, as I was last year, and feel like everyone who overdrafted Kelce really got lucky in that situation. I still think they ultimately want to rest him and only have him available for the playoffs, essentially, unless they truly need him. The rest also, we're worried about the windows here. Mark Andrews, unusable the first month and a half of the season, so much so he was dropped in season-long leagues and then went on that hellacious tear of just scoring touchdowns in consecutive games. But he obviously showed us last year that maybe we should start being concerned about the twilight of his career. And so Mark Andrews, just based on the floor he showed last year, someone I probably won't be higher on, considering that in best ball, we still have elite wide receivers and running backs going in this range of players. Thus, I don't want to take on these floors when I feel like I can get better players at other positions instead of drafting these guys. That also goes for Jonnu Smith, who I feel like anytime a tight end breaks out, like, yes, congratulations to the tight end, but it's never good for the offense. Like when Evan Ingram broke records for Jacksonville, there's a reason why Jacksonville missed the playoffs. Last year, whenever Jonnu Smith was setting records or leading Miami's offense in receiving, there's a reason why Miami's offense also did not make the playoffs. And it's because you're depending on these players closer to the line of scrimmage, and they're not really adding explosiveness, or they're not stretching the offense at all. They are leading the team as opposed to being a complementary piece, and that's what the receiving tight ends are supposed to be. And so Jonnu Smith, if the Dolphins are at full strength, if they have better pass protection, it's a bigger if, I understand that. But if they are at full strength, the Dolphins are not prioritizing Jonnu Smith. Like, he's not suddenly better than Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. They would still prioritize their wide receivers. And so there is definitely a chance that a tight end like Jonnu, who broke out in his age 29 season, that's just false. That's just going to recalibrate and come back, and that's not a window we want to be a part of. So I'll definitely be down and underweight on Jonnu Smith this best ball season. And then, of course, the other two, Evan Ingram. What does his Joker role entail? I know we all said it a lot that Sean Payton is looking for a Joker, but what does the Joker role even mean? Especially when this offense adds Pat Bryant, RJ Harvey in the draft, and so they are just expanding their target tree. I'm not sure. And so Evan Ingram, there's a wide range of outcomes there. And Colston Loveland, of course, is a receiving tight end, much more so than Cole Kmet, arguably much more so than Tyler Warren. But also, there are a lot of mouths to feed in Chicago. The target tree could be spread out. Loveland, obviously, also a rookie tight end. So there's just a lot more to be concerned if you're drafting with this tier of players, given the other positions and other players that are going around them.
The Loveland thing I'm fascinated by. I think he might end up being more or less their slot receiver, or get a lot of their slot receiver reps. Because I think, when they only have one tight end, I think a lot of times that'll be Kmet. I think I think Loveland might be more like a slot receiver. What about this next tier, which I find interesting? It's three guys: David Njoku for the Browns, Tyler Warren, the rookie with the Colts, and Dallas Goedert, who has had trouble staying healthy, but man, he looked awesome in the postseason for the Eagles. And after this pay cut restructured contract, he's now in a contract year.
And when he was healthy last year, he was still providing over an 18% target share. He showed maybe that was the way Kellen Moore ran the Eagles offense and made it fluid through the tight end position. But Dallas Goedert showed he can earn targets around Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, like rival them as the team's leading receivers sporadically throughout the year. And so Dallas Goedert, Njoku, Tyler Warren, this is just a tier of guys who are going to play every snap, but we are still questioning the target trees around them and what their offense looks like. Tyler Warren obviously battling both Michael Pittman and Josh Downs with poor quarterback play from Richardson and Daniel Jones that we've talked about in past shows. David Njoku, arguably the worst quarterback situation in the league right now, with either Kenny Pickett or Gabriel or Shadur Sanders, I guess is what they're dealt with right now. And so just questioning the offensive systems and environments for these three players in this tier, despite undeniably going to get the snaps.
We didn't talk about this. There's some talk that Jonnu Smith could get traded to the Steelers. Maybe we'll talk about that when we get to Freiermuth and his tier. The Tyler Warren thing's interesting. If there were other teams, he might have even gotten some reps running the ball, like as a quarterback, but I don't think that's going to be the case in Indy with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. The next tier, we've got Dalton Kincaid, Jake Ferguson, Kyle Pitts, Tucker Kraft, and Isaiah Likely.
A couple years ago, when Joe Brady brought Dalton Kincaid back for the playoffs, he expanded his role. And then everyone drafted Kincaid last year as if that role was going to be expanded and he was going to be more of a downfield receiver as opposed to someone they only pepper at the line of scrimmage, because you can't really score fantasy points or have a ceiling that way. You earn easy receptions if you're peppered close to the line of scrimmage, but also then you're asked to fight upfield for everything you earn. Those aren't tight ends we're really excited about because they have lower ceilings, logically, by not getting deeper targets. But then Joe Brady really just kept Dalton Kincaid near the line of scrimmage again, which is why he didn't provide a ceiling last year. And so we have to begin questioning maybe Buffalo has just pigeonholed Kincaid already to be someone that only runs satellite routes, really, in the flats as opposed to being used downfield. That takes away from his weekly ceiling. So Kincaid, not someone we're really excited about, but we're taking on because at least he'll be out there. Jake Ferguson, I'm far more excited about, for example, because he has shown he can be a top 12 scorer weekly when he's at full strength, including last year. I know we're adding George Pickens to this target tree in Dallas, so it gets a little tougher, but Jake Ferguson's definitely going to be out there as primarily a receiver. So I still love Jake Ferguson from this tier. If you don't have a tight end yet, I definitely don't mind coming away from the rest of the board and drafting Jake Ferguson over the rest of these guys, Kincaid included. The rest, question marks around given their target trees. Kyle Pitts. What is he in the final year of his rookie contract? Are the Falcons already done with him? Or do they have any interest whatsoever in bringing him back? All fair questions that probably make us low again on Kyle Pitts. And then, of course, Tucker Kraft, who is amazing. A freak athlete who, when he gets the ball, already shown he can spike 100 yards in an instant. But we're adding Matthew Golden here, taking away Christian Watson most likely for the entire year. But we're adding Matthew Golden. And so the target tree is even more ambiguous than past years with Jordan Love. So don't mind taking on Tucker Kraft, but we're still questioning, like, what is even his outcome here with the Packers passing this season. And then, of course, Isaiah Likely, who has shown when he's the only tight end out there, top 3 option very easily, someone you would want to take on in an instant and season long if Mark Andrews is out. But when Andrews is out there, then I likely still, it's very random and hard to project for him on a week-to-week basis. So he's down here in this tier if only because he is still clearly in a committee with Mark Andrews after the Ravens did not cut or trade Andrews to save money against their cap this season.
It is June, people. You know what that means? It's Labatt Blue Light season. They got that nice lime flavor too, by the way. And it's buy beer, get gear from Labatt. Go to this website, okay? It's rewards.labattusa.com. Sign up. Just throw your email in there, and then anytime you buy Labatt, which should be a lot, upload your receipt. You'll get incredible merch. Just go to rewards.labattusa.com to see the sweet merch they have because it is awesome. Rewards.labattusa.com. You can hear all about it, but just go check out the merch first. I think it's interesting. A couple of first-round picks like Kincaid and Pitts haven't really become what I think a lot of people were hoping or thinking that they would be. That's something to keep an eye on as it relates to Loveland in particular. These receiving tight ends that go in the first round. I don't think Pitts or Kincaid have lived up to what people were hoping they would be. The last tier, you've got Pat Freiermuth from the Steelers, Mike Gesicki, who had a nice year for the Bengals, Zach Ertz, likewise had a nice year for the Commanders, Brenton Strange, who's now tight end 1 in Jacksonville, and Hunter Henry, who's kind of unreliable there for the Patriots.
Just a lot of guys who, if things broke right or if they stayed healthy, could still rival top 12 production. Mike Gesicki and Cade Otton are in similar boats in that their splits were wildly different based on who was on the field. Like, Cade Otton was basically unusable in fantasy and season long whenever Mike Evans played. But only then, when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who overlapped, were injured at the same time, only then did Cade Otton become a top 12 tight end. Because obviously, at that time, the Bucs had nowhere else to go. But now they have both Jalen McMillan and Emeka Buka if Godwin and Evans were injured again. So pretty much down on Cade Otton altogether. He'll be overvalued in season-long leagues, but definitely want to be underweight in best ball. And the same thing for Mike Gesicki. Had a good year, but if you look at the splits without T. Higgins, Gesicki wasn't even a top 24 tight end when T. Higgins was on the field. Only when Higgins was out did they then use Gesicki basically as a slot receiver and just play Eric All or another backup tight end instead and allow Gesicki to be their wide receiver too. But in best ball, again, we talk about windows for season long, and season long that's easy because you either pick up Gesicki on free agency or you keep him stashed in deeper leagues and you don't start him at all unless T. Higgins is out. And best ball, we can't plan for that. And so we are drafting T. Higgins, or we're drafting Gesicki, assuming that there will be times T. Higgins is out. And if Higgins is out, we then get this week winning projection from Gesicki despite using a 16th, 17th round pick on him. That's a big difference right there in best ball and season long. And so I still don't mind taking on that volatility of Gesicki just because, again, this is best ball, and you can add that potential production in one of the last rounds.
What about Ertz, Strange, and Henry?
Just a bunch of guys we expect to be out there running routes. Can Zach Ertz, at this stage of his career, replicate the high receiving floor he had, since it's really about being peppered with receptions ahead of Ben Sinnott? Ben Sinnott, who actually had very good draft capital last year as well under Cliff Kingsbury, just really couldn't earn a role ahead of Zach Ertz. Does that happen this year? Is it something similar to Trey McBride, who also was very bad in his rookie year, but then emerged ahead of Zach Ertz in his second season? It could be something like that for Ben Sinnott instead. So still worried about Zach Ertz, but obviously showed that he can provide top 12 weeks whenever he is healthy. Same thing for Hunter Henry, who, like Demario Douglas, rivaled at times to be Drake May's favorite receiver when Drake May was on the field, and Hunter Henry was obviously on the field with him. But given what they added the Patriots in their passing game and rushing game, since Travion Henderson is a receiving back, what does that target tree look like now? Not sure, but at least we know Hunter Henry will be on the field as the team's starting tight end.
Do not forget to go to establishtherun.com and use that code FEAST to get that incredible 20% discount on more information like this from our guy John. Appreciate those of you that rate and review the show. That means a lot. And certainly those of you that subscribe and share, whether that's podcast or YouTube. Next couple weeks, we got the running backs and the receivers. You are not going to want to miss it. I'm stuffed. We're done.
Thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Feast. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcasts on your favorite platform.